Our next question is specifically for Eric Bland. This is from Devixa from YouTube. I hope I got that right. Which revelations have come out now that the trial is underway that have blown your mind so far, if any?
Well, lots. Paul being shot first, for one. The Snapchat video, which probably shows that he changed his clothes before calling the police after 10 o'clock when he's allegedly discovered the murders. The phone evidence that places him in the kennels.
You didn't know about this before the trial?
No.
Okay.
No. The entire narrative that Maggie was asked to come to Mizell from Edisto to go visit Alex's ailing father, who was dying in the hospital, and that they would ride together from Mizell, yet after 9:05 at night he leaves the property. He doesn't get her, doesn't pick her up, doesn't talk to her, and doesn't even go see the father. He goes to the mother's house. We also learned a GSR, which is gunshot residue, on the seatbelt and the blue jacket that he took to his mother's house. So the state has done a really good job, I think, of keeping Dick Harpootlian and Jim Griffin diverted. I think the blood splatter on the shirt is going to turn out to be a Trojan horse. I'm not sure that's going to be the major piece of circumstantial evidence. And Dick and Jim have spent about 3 months on that.
Mm-hmm. Well, they may not introduce it at all. I'm not sure they should. I mean, it just seems too contentious and silly.
Correct.
Like, it seems like they ruined the shirt. Just get rid of it, okay?
Right. But they had so much backup circumstantial evidence that they were very confident.
Yeah. Michael Bryant, this question is for you from Tom Kaiser from YouTube. Could Alex get a manslaughter conviction due to pressures and so-called drug addiction, or is it murder or nothing? What are your thoughts on that? Because it would, I think, you know, either side would have to ask for a lesser included offense, and of course the judge would have to approve that.
It's always a play in a poker hand kind of situation here. Will the prosecution at the end of their case, at the end of the entire case, feel like, you know, let's hedge our bets here. Let's ask for the lesser includeds just because we got to get this guy for something. I don't think the prosecution's figured that out just yet. I would be surprised, based on what I'm seeing so far, if they don't ask for lesser includeds, but we just don't know. It's their call, and it's too soon to see what it's going to be.
Mm-hmm. Gigi, let's get one over to you. Julie Imholz from YouTube asks, do we know if Alec had life insurance on Maggie and Paul?
That was discussed today, at least from what we heard through, I'm not sure of the name of the company, but he did not have insurance on them, as far as we know, which is surprising.
And that's what we've heard from the defense team. At least they've said no. So I don't know. We might find out something new. I don't know. I think the defense would know, though, if that was true.
High net worth individuals wouldn't do that, though, because he has enough money that he wouldn't have had a policy on Maggie. Usually, you get a policy on the spouse, that if, God forbid, something happens to the husband, she can continue to raise the children
kids, yeah,
until they're 18. These kids were over 18 years old, so I don't think that there was a need for a policy on the spouse because he was such a high net worth, in theory, a high net worth individual.
In theory, of course. Sweet Whispers from YouTube. Have the Satterfield boys gotten money yet? Eric?
Yes, we have been fortunate, and we've recovered in excess of $7.5 million for them from various sources, from Corey Fleming, from his law firm, from Palmetto State Bank, and from Alex's law firm. We have recovered significant money from them to put them in a position that they don't have to worry for the rest of their life. Plus, we have the $4.3 million judgment that's being used in this court today as a financial pressure that Alex was under. When we got it, I don't think Jim and Dick really understood how it was going to be used, and the next day after I got it, I gave it to our state's ODC, which is the Office of Disciplinary Counsel, and he was disbarred 2 days later.
Wow. So it was a big deal.
It was a big get.
Yeah, I mean, and he essentially admitted to it.
Yes.
The confession of judgment with that settlement, he literally said, okay, I did it.
Yes.
You got me, make it right. So
yeah, they've been made almost whole. You know, we would argue that there was an income tax implication and the loss of use of the money, but if everything was paid under the 4.3 million, they would have only gotten about 2.9 million, and we've gotten them, once we netted out our fees, well in excess of $4.5 million. Wow. So it's been good.
Jen from YouTube, Michael Bryant, she asks, does the prosecution need the weapons if they can prove that other rounds are on the property with the same markings as the rounds that killed Maggie and Paul? What are your thoughts on that? Because that's basically what we're hearing about from Paul Greer.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen many cases that have been result in convictions without the murder weapon. What I don't like is the use of all these other weapons, which are agreed not the murder weapon, to prejudice this jury into thinking, well, hey, a gun's a gun's a gun. They have shotguns just like the one used to murder Paul. They have the 300 blackouts just like the one used to murder Maggie. So therefore, bing, bing, bing. I've just connected those dots. I hate to see the jury do that. I'd like to see more. I think it's harmful to have this prejudicial type exposure of these other weapons if they can't create a more significant link to the actual weapons, whether they're found or not. The connection to the defendant has to be made, and I'm not sure it's been made yet.
And we're waiting to see if that connection is going to be made. Let's see. Let's get to some more questions. Gigi, I guess I'm just going to ask you this question. You live in this state, and you know a lot of people in this state. What are you hearing? And you have your podcast too. What are you hearing from people about this trial so far? Are you hearing from people in the state and in the area that say they think the state is doing well, they think the defense is doing well? What are your thoughts?
A lot of my listeners feel that the motive just doesn't fit. I mean, that's kind of the main thing I'm hearing all over is, why would you commit a double murder if you're trying to take focus off your financial crimes? That seems to be the most thing that I'm hearing. There are people who say it fits. It's kind of all over the place, but I'll tell you one thing, a lot of people who are local and just across the state do not think he'll be found guilty. That's what I'm hearing. They think it'll be a hung jury because there's still fear in this community that grip is still here of the Murdaughs for, it's been here for almost 100 years. It's interesting. It's kind of all over the board, really.
Well, and it only takes one juror for a hung jury, and we still have a long way to go in this trial. So even thinking about deliberations at this point, we're still very early, but it's always interesting to see how the public is viewing this, especially when you talk to people right here in Walterboro or in other parts of the state. So we are taking your questions live. Submit them to us on Twitter and in our YouTube chat, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. We're going to take a quick break. If you're watching on YouTube, stay with us. We have to do this for the network. It'll just be a couple of minutes. I'm Anjanette Levy, coming to you live from Walterboro, South Carolina, and you are watching Law and Crime.